in many meetings.
Yes, ma'am.
But anyway, I have a question with something that Mark said about a mission statement that this place is for children and agriculture. You know, Marion Phillips and I think she was here, if she's not still here, we looked a while back when there was some trouble on the fairgrounds, and we looked for the deed, and we've never seen the original deed. But if this land was deeded to our children and to agriculture, I think we have a responsibility, and sir, I think you have a responsibility if this ever sells. And I am emotional about Jefferson County Fairgrounds. It's in my heart. It's a part of my life. And lots leading the auction, and you know, we've done a little bit of everything here, but I just really truly believe we have a responsibility to our kids. And I just don't think we can take that money and put it somewhere else. I think your lawyer might agree, if it's in writing somewhere, we need to know that. And I don't know how much clout a mission statement would have.
30 seconds.
But if it's deeded to our kids, the kids of this county, I think it needs to stay the kids of this county, or we should find them something better. So.
Yeah, I'm not aware.
The deed was to Jefferson County, and the grantors didn't put any kind of restriction on it about how the property could be used.
Really?
Yeah.
Because part of it, I think the top part of the fairgrounds used to be a landfill. It's not buildable. There's a landfill underneath the rodeo piece of it, of the upper part where the RV lot is and stuff.
Correct.
So I think only out of the fairgrounds, how many acres is fairgrounds? No, it's, well,
No,
it's buildable acres is like 23 acres, so this isn't a piece of property that there would be a line from here to Timbuktu waiting to buy it. It's just, and again, that's not something that I'm advocating
There's been
for.
interest, you know,
And ma'am, there has been no decision, I swear, on this. It's not. I wouldn't waste my time of being here, and I wouldn't waste your time if I thought the decision was made already. This would be a lot of pain for me to go through that if it's an already done deal, right? Sir, this young lady right here, she has had her hand up all
That
night.
would be great.
'Cause I'm
So
wearing
is
the
this lady
ASU
over here.
That's what I thought, but I was helping you
I
out.
went for early, not pretty. I'm sorry. Hi, I'm Haley.
Hi, Haley.
I am a resident of technically unincorporated Jefferson County. Speaking to what the fairgrounds is for us, part of the reason I've moved here is because of the fact that it is agricultural. I don't want my kids plugged in. I want my kids outside. That's why I moved here. My daughter has a sensory processing disorder, and the world is really hard for her sometimes. And the only thing that seems to help is her ponies. And that came after she fostered lambs. We had lambs in our house in pajamas and diapers. And her dad almost killed
That's
me.
awesome.
And she turns 8 in November. So 4-H is the one thing that she has had her heart set on. She wants to do the equestrian, she wants to raise the animals and do all the fun stuff. If the fairgrounds goes and 4-H is moved, I don't know that I can, as a parent, travel however many times a week, the distance that it's gonna take to get her to and from 4-H. Trailering, the gas that is associated with hauling a trailer with a horse in it. And like you said, you're military, thank you for your service. Imagine if we were to take the DFW and the ombudsman for the wives, and we were to just smash that. That is essentially what we're asking, or being asked to do to our agricultural community. This is a central hub of our way of life, of, you know, all of us who read the studies that say, hey, our kids are suffering, their brains are short wiring because of too much screen time, and we're sitting here saying we're trying to get them outside. We're trying to keep them out of trouble. Those of us who are part of the system that says that they help us, the money that goes to Medicaid and the schools that supposedly help kids like my daughter, who is still not getting help from the system, from any of that. The only thing she has is this, I mean, this is a kid who can't tell you what she wants for breakfast, ever. And she can tell me every single day for the last year, I want to be a vet. Because of 4-H, because of agriculture. And this is it, this is our hub. I'm also the vice president of the LRC, which has been here for 80 years. And it is dwindling. Open spaces are shoving us out. They don't want horses on the trails. God forbid you get poop on my shoes. This is what we're dealing with. This is what we have. This is where we have to go. With our horses, with our cattle, our kids can learn responsibility. Not, hey, I'm gonna call someone a name through a screen. You stand up to someone's face and you communicate with them. And you're taking that away. Or it's being talked about being taken away, or shifted, or moved. And I'm curious as to what part of this money, and this is a question, what part of the money, the recuperative costs, are coming from, I know 4-H has to pay these things. What part of it comes from Westerners?
Westerners is, when they use any of our facilities, they pay the same rates as, I believe, 4-H. All the youth organizations pay a lower rate than the standard rates.
Okay.
We have youth rates set up because of our mission statement. And we've tried really hard to keep those down as low as possible. But at the same time, when we were asked to start the cost recovery program, we got word from the commissioners that because of the shortfall, we needed to at least charge some fees for 4-H, Westerners, and whatever. But they're all paid the same. So.
Okay.
But thank you very much. This young lady over here in the green, her arm also was falling off, so it was a toss-up which one was going to go first. But go ahead.
Okay, so my name is Michaela Nickel. I was in 4-H for 11 years. I'm no longer in. I'm alumni, but I still very, very much care about everything that goes on through 4-H. And just so you guys know, I know you guys say closing the fairgrounds won't affect 4-H. It will, because you guys close the fairgrounds. Where are our horses going to go? Where will we be showing any of our horses? Right now, I think we only have one show that's at the fairgrounds. That's because 4-H can't pay to be here. Like, we do all of our fundraisers and everything like that to try and pay for it, but we still can't pay for it. And I understand that reasoning behind having all these costs and stuff like that is so you guys generate your money. But at the same time, if you guys close the 4-H, close the fairgrounds, it's gonna end up closing 4-H for Jefferson County due to the fact that no one that is in Jefferson County through 4-H will be able to actually pay for anything to use through 4-H. I know my club that I had started in Jefferson County and we were using the facilities, we had to move because they could not generate the funds every month to be able to ride at your facilities. And I understand that you guys give us a discount. You think that's a discount for us when the only way that we're generating money is through selling butter braids or through our show, 4-H horse shows, and the only way we can make money through our 4-H horse shows is if we get that entire show paid off. And that's through sponsorships, because we have to pay for a judge, we have to pay for the usage of your facility. We even have to pay to use your guys' microphone. Like, there's so many things that you guys are trying to make the money off of, but it's also ruining our 4-H clubs because we can't generate the kind of funding in order to pay for them. You guys don't think that closing the fairgrounds is going to affect 4-H? It's going to affect them. We're already losing 4-H clubs now, and once you guys close the fairgrounds, 4-H is going to be run down even more because 4-H fairgrounds is like the general area of everyone meeting. But if we take away the fairgrounds, that general meeting is going to be gone.
There's a lady right here in a white shirt.
My name is Susan Dorland, and my question comes from a different perspective, and I respect everything everyone says. I've had an event here for the last 4 years. I have one coming up April 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And I'm getting a little concerned. Do I have to worry about anything happening that I will not be able to hold my event here?
In 2020?
Yes, this
No,
year.
No,
Okay.
we aren't, we're not, our bookings are booked and we're not talking about 2020. I mean, we're talking about 2021. And those decisions would get made when, if the board decided to cease operations. If they don't, then you know, one of the things that, you know, that's good about this is that if they did make the decision to say, do this, okay, that means now we're focusing our efforts on other things, the rest of the county. Like I said, nothing is off limits, and we're looking at everything. So it's just, we're going through the list of things, and things will come off, things will be added. So no, to answer to your question.
Back right.
My name's Mary. I live in Lakewood. I have just a general comment, just kind of hearing through. Full disclosure, I grew up inner city Chicago. I've lived in Colorado for 27 years now. I don't have kids. I didn't grow up with 4-H. Having lived here for as long as I have throughout a lot of parts of the state, I was in the Four Corners, I was down in Colorado Springs for a long time. Hearing everything that they have to go through from like an economic perspective, just to do basic agriculture, which is what we need for sustenance. All of us need food. What these kids do is teach us where that's coming from. And to eliminate a program to then potentially put something where this facility, this location is being sold theoretically to a developer, if that were to happen, it's just creating more and more and more of a food desert, in the sense that it's not so much a grocery store issue, it's really knowing where your food is coming from. And I think it's so frustrating having grown up without that and being in an environment where I have that now. All of a sudden it's just saying it's not important, what these kids are doing isn't important, recognizing where our food is coming from, where our basic needs are being met for a lot of these kids. You mentioned it about the whole horse thing and you know what we do in this community. You talked about it from like an economic perspective. None of that really seems to be looking at, and it's frustrating because a lot of what I'm hearing is just, well, it's, you know, the history of it, or it's an economic thing. It needs to be both, and it's an ongoing both argument. And I agree with what you were saying in terms of there needs to be a full review of this from a financial perspective, not just now, but 5-10 years from now, in terms of the facility itself, as well as from a strictly agricultural perspective, what that actually is providing to this community, which is a lot. So that's all I have to say about it.
Sammy, so you said the decision hasn't been made yet, right? What's the next step? Where do we gotta show up to next? Make our voice
So
heard?
February 4th is a briefing to the board. That's not a participatory thing, that's just the board getting some information. That's when there'll be some numbers and stuff thrown out so that the group will be able to, like the gentleman said earlier about being able to review. The board will make a decision on time to hear it, if they want to go forward it, or they may get the briefing and decide, yeah, we don't want to do this, we don't even want to look at it, so we move on. Again, I would encourage you all to write emails, you know, send them to the board, you know, put the comments in on our website, and that is all helpful. It helps the board make an informed decision.
And there's nowhere that we can like have this kind of meeting with the board. That's not coming up anytime soon. is what you're telling me.
Well, I mean, that's what a hearing is for, but it's
So
not
that
a
would
back
be
and
after.
forth. You can provide a comment, but what I'm doing here, I hope you guys realize it's definitely unusual. But I'm not an elected official, so I don't necessarily have to follow those rules, and I want to make myself available for you. So
Appreciate that.
the hearing would be, if it goes to a hearing, the board, I would not recommend to the board to hear a briefing and make a decision, given the amount of folks that are up here. So our recommendation would be to absolutely have some more hearings and more conversations about this. And again, the best thing y'all can do is go home tonight and tomorrow and send your emails to the commissioners and to the website. So I think, has everybody gotten a chance to ask one question? I think that's probably the goal first before we go to Pete.
Okay, I'm Kelly Lee Shaw. I've been a granddaughter of Fletcher Wood. Agriculture is big for us. A couple years ago, you guys had passes for us to use for the indoor arena. And my sister and I spent over $600. Where did that money go when we couldn't use the arena? We only got to use it twice, and every year we kept buying the passes. And buying the passes. But we couldn't use the arena, but we still put that money for those passes. Where did that money go? For what?
So that money would have gone into revenue.
It
Now I
stays in the
can't
fairgrounds.
speak.
It goes against it's the part of the revenue that is counted against the cost recovery.
What
Okay.
year was this?
This was, and we started it in 2016 and it ended in 2018.
We haven't sold the open riding passes for several years.
So this is during that time. I have all my passes. I kept them. Because this is my home. This is my home away from home. I grew up here. We had Festival of the West. We've always had 4-H. 4-H is a big thing. Western Airs is a big thing. High school rodeo is a big thing. I've been in all those. But if we keep pushing, we're going to lose it. My generation spoke to you about college education. I have an autistic son. He will tell you, this is his place. This is where he can come and desensitize. Because the friendship of the 4-H kids, Western Air kids, high school rodeo kids. And we need to think of our kids with special needs too.
Yes, ma'am.
Andrea Rashke, I'm on the executive committee of the Jefferson County Horse Council and the Colorado Horse Council. I'll make a statement first that per the American Horse Council Foundation study in 2018, horses contribute a total of $1.8 billion with 34,000 jobs to Colorado's economy. The study also found that almost 1/3 of households, or 676,000 Coloradoans, are horse enthusiasts. That means that 1/3 of us are drawn to horses. This Fairgrounds is a hub for horses in our area. I will also say that in September we had representatives come to the Colorado Horse Council from the National Western Stock Show, the Ranch Events Complex in Loveland, and the Adams County Fairgrounds. Regional parks, I should say. All of these communities are investing in their fairgrounds. And I guess these are protected by funds from specific tax entities or whatever. So it sounds like this is something that we need to do because this fairgrounds is now funded by the general fund with income coming into the general fund. So even if we have a 200% cost recovery, we're still vulnerable to the whim of what the sheriff needs or the roads need. So my question is, do we need to really pursue another avenue because we're just caught in a no-win if they decide to win, we don't.
So ma'am, if we did get to 100, if we got to 90% cost recovery, everything comes off the book and it forms as an enterprise. The sheriff doesn't get any of that money. That money is not in the general, the general fund manages it, right? So like the airport is budget. They make enough money to sustain the airport operations. That money we account for in the general fund, but it doesn't count against our Tabor limit.
But is that held, is that 1 year that, we get one big grant and?
No, if you were to set up as an enterprise,
We'd have to set up as
you
an
keep, if we were to do that, I think it was way outside the box thinking. Me asking the staff to look at it, it was just me trying to figure out a way to keep it because I feel like you all, how important the fairgrounds. I have 4 kids of my own. I know how important it is. And so the staff, and I know how much the staff love what they do. So the goal was to come out, and I've asked the staff, think outside the box for some different things. So, but the answer to your question is if it was an enterprise and we were in the fairgrounds was making its own enough money to function as an enterprise, that money cannot be pulled out of the enterprise and given to the sheriff's office or any other department.
But if we were to get a one-time $50,000 grant, it wouldn't matter because it still wouldn't meet the 90% and it'd go back to the general fund.
It could be, but depending. If you do get the private partnership, public-private partnership, or you can get a sponsor with money that's really wants to come in and provide they agree and they think it's really important. There are answers out there that could involve the community bringing and businesses coming together to say we want to keep it.
Yeah, because other communities are doing it. Adams County, Larimer, Denver. So I just want to know how Jeffco could do the same thing.
And I wanted just to add to the enterprise fund discussion because we've heard the number 90%. 90% has to come not from taxes, only 10% has come from taxes. That's not the Board of County Commissioners saying you have to have 90%. That's Tabor itself.
And that was my other question, because, again, Tabor, we get all this money coming in, and the county says, you've exceeded your limit, you gotta refund it. Well, what was all the effort for?
Well, that's the law, that's
Right,
the
no, and
constitutional
I'm
provision
saying,
of
how can we
Tabor.
get around that, and that's the other.
The enterprise fund is one way, but then there is that requirement that only 10% can come from taxes.
So, but
and-
how other counties, how Denver, Larimer, Adams.
All those counties, with the exception of Weld, are in some way, shape, or form. They've done something. They haven't gotten rid of the going to the taxpayers, that part of it. But what they have done is they've gone out with either a sales tax or, our open space tax. What a great vision the people had in the 70s, 73? 72, when they envisioned the need for open space and that tax. They set that tax up, and that is not limited to Tabor. And as a result, you have really great open spaces. And I realize there might be some folks that walk on those trails that don't want to have horse poop on their feet or on their bicycle tires, but that's part of that sharing piece that we make there. But that's a perfect example of a group thinking forward in
That's
order
the
to
part I'd
protect
like
that.
to try and see how we can get to, is how we can get funds similar to, well, open space does, that can be dedicated just to this fairgrounds, be it,
Right, and I would only ask that, and I think that's a great option, except that, like was previously stated, every group is saying the same thing.
Right.
Why we're taking in there, and then they'll want their, I don't know if the sheriff is thinking about something similar. There is a mill levy that goes to law enforcement that's specifically for that, but it doesn't cover the bill, anything close. So, there could be a ballot initiative to go out for that. So there's, right, so, yeah, so, I mean, in the end, but even those types of ballot initiatives, if that relieves the pressure on the rest of the general fund, it helps, I think.
I think it's win-win.
Right, but like I said, we went to the voters with a very complex initiative that had a lot of different things lumped in, from the debrucing of non-property tax revenues to the 7-year sunset or resetting. I mean, that was confusing. I mean, in fact, if you look across the state, those ballot initiatives that were defeated were the ones that were pretty complicated, or it looked like a bunch of stuff was squeezed in. I think Arapahoe County had a jail on the, and that failed. But if you go down and you look at like Colorado Springs or El Paso County, they had some very simple yes or no, didn't require rocket science and there was no legal mumbo jumbo in there. So I think going forward, we're gonna have to figure out how to ask, if we do get to the point where we want to ask again. And that's something the commissioners need to hear from you too. If you think that we should go back and ask again, then that's something that you need to bring to their attention as well. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Thank you.
Okay.
Gentleman back here in the back.
My name's David. So I don't know a lot of really what happens here on these grounds. I'm with 4-H's as well, so I do 4-H events and everything, but I know there's a lot of other things that go on. And I like the conversation we had. I love you coming out and saying we need to think outside of the box, right? So I work in 8 different western states, and I have to manage a budget for that as well, so I totally understand where you're from and coming from as well. And to me, there's 2 different ways to save a program. One is with funding, obviously. 2 is value, right? The commissioners know the value of our kids. So that's a leg up for us, but to increase the value of the kids, and this is what I put on the committee and the fair staff is everything. How many kids are in this school district? Can you tell me that? 80,000 kids. I bet you don't see 80,000 kids out here a year. I used to be part of a nonprofit organization as well that did stuff for kids. We did fishing clinics for kids. When we walked into a school, we were swarmed because we were in a location that didn't have fishing for kids. We had a unique thing that we could offer them. And I think in this county, rural, sub-rural, this place has a really unique thing to offer the inner city kids that I don't know that if it's tapped or not. I don't know what level it's tapped, but but I would think that with the agricultural opportunities there, every venue that is out here should have probably 50% of its effort towards kids. If it's the rodeo, if it's the Western Airs, if it's, and I know Western Airs is all youth, not all youth, but youth, but everything that comes out here that I know that a lot of it is not youth oriented, but that's okay, drag youth into it. All these inner city kids, we did a petting zoo up in Conifer with the 4-H crew, and I don't know how many kids and adults had come up and said, what is this? I've never seen a goat before. You know, the value this place has to kids is that you can show the commissioners, I mean, like the rodeos you guys have all free to kids, have kids at events with it. And I know we have mutton busting and things like that too.
30 seconds.
But it really has to be, I mean, that's thinking outside the box. You have to really tailor that and raise the value of what you're producing here to show the commissioners that this is something that they don't want to get rid of.
Yeah, and I do want to defend the commissioners a little bit, is to say, they're not the ones, to your point, man, it's not a big decision, it's not like something they're suggesting that we consider, or that they don't value. They absolutely, I mean, they know that the future of our community is in our kids. I mean, they know that absolutely. You know, your conversation, your comments actually made me think about, you know, if over 50% of our property tax dollars is going to the school system, and this is part of our kids' education, and there's even a lot of homeschool kids and so forth that participate in the program, that I think it's their social piece. It augments their education. I wonder if the school board wouldn't be willing to step up and make some support. Well, why? Okay, wait a second. So, what's that?
It's worth asking.
It's worth asking. So I know you all laughed about that, but if I agree with you. I think it's all part of the development, and there's all these development things and all these education things that are meant for different groups of kids. This is a different group of kids. So why shouldn't the school system have an interest in the education of the kids that participate in this program? Dr. Glass will be calling me tomorrow asking me why I threw the school. Hey, I think that's outside the box thinking. Now, that would be something that you all ask questions to your representatives on the school board and so forth.
Young lady right over here.
Oh, Mark, thanks for calling me on. I'm Kim Fear. I'm a Western Air alumni. My husband grew up in Western Airs. His parents were in Western Airs. We're a Western Air family. I brought her out when she was 2 weeks old, literally. I have also spent, one of the things Western Airs taught me was leadership, the ability to take a hard look at things. I have worked in state government for just over 28 years now. I spent 6 years as the budget director of a state agency, the last 6 years as the financial manager for one of the divisions in that agency, so I understand the budgets. I think on your website you said OpenGov. Is there enough detail in the budget reports and the spreadsheets and the visuals there that I can take a look at it and say, okay, we need to find $1.8 million here or whatever it is because of Tabor? Can I look at other different programs across the county to see what other ideas there are that are out there? You've probably thought of them, I get that. But can we take a fresh look at it from another perspective, get the feedback back to the county through the commissioners, through the website comments and stuff like that? Is there enough information on that site that we can take a good hard look at that information?
Yes, ma'am. I think you can look at where the money has been spent. I mean, OpenGov, separating general fund from all of that, that's a little bit more difficult.
No, I get all that, yes.
So, yeah, we're open for it. I mean, again, you got everything from jail being closed and the sheriff not hiring deputies to what we're talking about here. So everything in between. I'd welcome it.
Yeah,
I would encourage you to kind of look at, when you do look at that, look at what other similarly sized counties and ask hard questions. I think that's part of what I do every day. I ask hard questions to different departments and elected officials and you know, to get after what you're talking about, so.
My department runs on federal funds, specific categorical federal funds. It runs on cash funds that are specific and categorical. We charge fees for certain issues, and we have general funds. I understand how all of those different parts work,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
I'll,
We welcome that. And we could probably get you some contact information. You want to talk to our budget folks, you can do that.
There's a young lady here that hasn't asked a question.
So, my name's Frelyn Bonham. I'm also a 4-H member. I've been in 4-H for a total of 9 years, and I'm only 14 years old at the moment. I've been president of my club for 2 years, but now I've had to step back because of that time limit. I want to ask, why, or is Jefferson County the only county that's pushing down? Because I know other counties in other states, I've lived in 2 other states, have 4-H and have fairgrounds. My parents basically traveled the country, and they went from fairground to fairground with the facilities to stay there. Are we the only county that is knocking down? And like my dad said back there about the kids going in the public schools, they don't know about this. I went into a 4th grade classroom and gave a presentation about agriculture and on John Deere, and they were blown away. They had no clue this was an opportunity for them. And I have so many now that are contacting me going, okay, how can I get into this? And now that you're saying that it's a possibility to close the fairgrounds, that's just losing their hopes. So are we the only fairgrounds that's actually trying to cut budget on this?
It's trying, what's the second part, trying to?
Cut budget.
It's not as I understand it, nationwide fairgrounds, there's just a lower interest in terms of the types of ag activity that we've seen. I was a base commander in Albany, Georgia, where they had a 40% poverty rate and 60% for children that were in poverty rate. 4-H and agriculture was important there, but because ag was changing, you weren't seeing as many people working the farm because of the change of the way we're doing agriculture. So it's been my experience, at least personal experience, that it is a nationwide phenomena in terms of the decreased activities that we're seeing at fairgrounds. So the quick answer to your question is I don't believe so. So, but that's something, again, you look to try to see what works in Boulder, what works in Adams, try to take those best practices of all the different places to try to apply them and maximize them here. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Do we have anybody? I don't believe you've asked a question previously.
My name is Janet Schrader, and I have a few comments. First of all, there is a fair happening this year, but it's called the 4-H Fair. What's the official name?
Exactly. I'm glad you brought that up.
Just wanted to clarify. And I think a public forum, and let's see, I don't think it's reasonable to expect our advisory board to come up with big solutions in 2 weeks. I don't think that's very reasonable or respectful. If I were in their shoes, I would think that. I do think that. And also, so a question, to verify something for my question. It takes $1.8 million to operate the fairgrounds? Okay, so my question, how much money does Jefferson County receive from state and federal sources to subsidize activities housed or headquartered here at the fairgrounds, including the land-grant university money from the USDA and from like the Ford F-150 raffle? I think they raised $124,000. And you've also got the Child and Youth Families at Risk program, which is really good. So how much money do we receive? So therefore, it has to go to that $1.8 million.
Yeah, so I know the Ford F-150 raffle, I don't know if Jackie from CSU is still here. I believe that's a 4-H piece, right?
Yeah.
Janet, I got your call, but
It was late.
we weren't able to call out because of injuries.
Understand.
So the money that comes in for some of those programs does not actually come to the county. I'm Jackie Payo, and I'm the director of the CSU Extension Office here in Jefferson County. And so a lot of not all, but about at least 50% of the whole pie that covers CSU Extension comes through the university, but it does not go through the county budget. So you wouldn't see it if you go to OpenGov. The youth and families, the program for kids at risk, that mentoring program, it is grant funded, but that grant is housed at the university, so it's not affected by Tabor. And we have some other grants that are housed at the university, so they're not affected, they don't impact Tabor. Our entire operation is not, we have about $1 million budget as well, which is different from the fairgrounds. Some of that money does go to pay fairgrounds fees, but not for the youth programs. The money that the youth raise at the barn dance goes to pay those fairground fees for the youth programs. Does that answer some of the questions?
I think so. So is any of that money that, the state and federal dollars is funneled through the extension office, and that budget is separate from the $1.8 million?
Correct.
Okay.
So the 1.8, just to verify a little bit, 1.3 comes from the general fund, the other 500,000 is from event revenue.
Right. But it still costs $1.8 million.
Right.
Okay. So, for that $1.8 million, so do you get any government money that's not what Jackie was describing?
I think, I don't know if we've got any CTF dollars that have been coming towards, so the Conservation Trust Fund, which comes from the lottery. There is some money that comes to the fairgrounds as a part, but that still goes through the general fund. That comes in the general fund. Anything that would come in that type would go into the general fund, and then it would get issued to, if it's state or like state funds, that's gonna count against Tabor. Federal funds do not count against Tabor.
But is it earmarked for?
I'm not aware of any federal funds that we've got coming into the fairgrounds for fairground operations. For Jackie's program, yes, but that's through the university system, so we're not seeing that.
Okay. What if you give the fairgrounds to the citizens? I mean, it's ours anyways, but to operate, or would that come into the enterprise system that you've been talking about?
So it is already operated by the citizens. I think, actually, Western Airs, I think their model is pretty much all volunteer. I mean, they're operating and running the business over there. You know, I mean, I'm sure there's a budget somewhere, because you gotta have, how many horses we got over there, like 250? Yeah, I think, yeah, so there's a lot of horses over there, but, you know, so that's already run by, that's run by the citizens, and they operate that. Your fairgrounds is operated by the citizens too, it's just through the county. It wouldn't change the cost for you guys to run it, do you know what I mean? I think, I don't know what, you know, I mean, in that context, would you want it separately, or would you want it with Western Airs? Does Western Airs take over, or put together a proposal where they make an offer to run the rest of the fairgrounds, and then they can, you know, I don't know. I don't know. That's a lot of, doesn't change that stuff. And there's a lot of other requirements that really require it's not just enough to have manual labor. You know what I mean? There's all sorts of other things that have to be done that are not manual labor, that really cost actual money, so.
Can you do a bill levy?
You could, but then that goes back to a ballot initiative. That would be required, and everybody would have the same idea. So how many different mill levies? I would submit that if you've looked at your tax bill, there's already so many mill levies on there. And you heard that comment is that, you know, folks have a lot on there.
But one thing is true with budgets. You raise money to help this area, but then that frees up money over here. So I'm not saying you're being irresponsible.
Right.
But humans can be irresponsible, then they can spend more because they say, oh, I don't have to earmark it over here, I'm
Right.
freed up. So,
Well, 2/3 of our budget is already earmarked. If it wasn't, we would have the flexibility to do the things that you would want us to do. But because we don't have that flexibility, it's not up to us. So I'll be honest with you, I don't know that earmarking, if you're in the business and it's for you, it's probably good. But if you're not, it's not so good, because then what happens when you have, and we have a representative government, so you have representatives you have in there that you elected to put them in office. You want them to make decisions based on the current needs of the community. If everything was earmarked, they can't make any, they wouldn't be able to make any decisions on it. I know the other 2/3 of the budget that's earmarked, they can't make any decisions to reprioritize.
But humans can waste, and I am curious what you find out about that $100,000, because you said you will.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
We'll look at it.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I think we're down to the 3 repeats.
4 repeats. So, is there anybody else out here that would like to make a comment that hasn't? And if not, then we'll go on over and we can just start right back here. Kevin?
Okay. So, everybody in this room, if you guys think that we should have shelters for the homeless, raise your hand.
What was your question again?
He's asking about shelters for the homeless.
If you want to keep the fairgrounds here, raise your hand. Okay, those two kind of conflict. And obviously there's a majority here who wants to keep the fairgrounds here, because we're all horse people, or sheep people, or whatever. And so I think what we need to do is shift the public eye on the benefits of keeping horses, right? Because what you said is, because there's been less people coming to the fairgrounds, and I feel like we could shift public eye on how people pursue it. Just repeat it. So I don't know what that would mean, but I feel like we could, I don't know, we could like go to schools and say, hey, here's a great way to join Western Airs, or things like that, to make it seem more valuable and have more people come towards the thing and get into the system of horses. How would that work though, to change public eye on Westerners? Because
I don't think, so maybe a little amplification, and tell me if I'm trying to help you out here.
Yeah.
I don't think people have a negative view of Western Airs or
They don't
agriculture,
have a
right?
negative view.
There's just not as
There's
many
less.
people interested
Yeah,
as they
that's
used to
what I
be.
mean. Yeah.
And I think part of it has to do with the nature of the business. It's different, agriculture, where you used to have a bunch of folks working the land. When I was in Georgia, I'd watch a farmer sit in his tractor reading a book while the tractor drove and planted the entire field. Why? Because the tractor was completely automated and it was using GPS to maximize the planting of the field. When you take the people out of the business, and then going back to the point of where does our food come from and what are those types of things, the nature of that business, I think, is changing. And so I think that's part of the lower demand or the lower interest. So many people are plugged in. I don't want people to plug. I got 4 kids. I hate when they're plugged in. I put rules in place, right? They only get so much time a day, and then it can't be in their possession. But that's the world we live in now. So I think I don't think there's a negative view. I just don't think there's a ton of interest, and I think that is part of the challenge: is how do we build interest or make sure we protect what we've got.
Yes, ma'am.
So I have a question. If we don't get that 90% by whatever day, are the fairgrounds gone?
No, that's just an idea. No, that was just an idea being thrown out as a possibility to get to an answer to where we're not looking at this every year, or we're not talking about the fair, or we're not doing something that would be outside the box to maybe help with a solution. So the answer to your question, there is no magical day. The budget, when it gets finalized in October, as we work through this entire process, this is all part of that process, is discussing what our options are, what's available, where there is, here's where we spend money, and then the board's gonna have to make some hard decisions and say, here's where we're gonna cut, or here's where we're gonna reduce. Maybe they decide not to shut down fairground operations, but maybe they decide to cut them in half. I don't know. Or maybe they decide to reduce it. Some of the things, again, what we look at is, do we shut down a day, or what are the different things that we can do to get after that. But in the end, what we're looking at across the county, and I know I appreciate the revenue conversations. We asked the question about the revenue, and the answer was no. So now what we're looking at is the expenditures, because our expenditures are at 4.67%. Those expenditures have to come down to at or below Tabor. And if we only come to at Tabor, I'll be honest with you, I'd love to see us go below the limit, because then that gives us some ability to maneuver, right? If I only go to the paycheck to live paycheck to paycheck, think about it. If you got a house and you want to do a renovation and all we do is live paycheck to paycheck, are you ever going to be able to do the renovation? So in order to get to the point where you want to do the renovation, you got to drop below, you got to drop your expenses below to where you got at least some money to put aside. And so that's, I've been trying to work to where we can actually get below paycheck to paycheck. But what we're looking at right now for 2021, the guidance that I've been given and the elected officials agree, is just get us paycheck to paycheck. So that's what the goal is 2021, is to get our spending down to what Tabor is, right there. So we bring in, we spend, and everything gets put right back out to the people. So that's kind of where we're at with that. So there's no magical date for enterprise. I don't want to confuse, that was just one possible option out of three possible options that we just kind of currently looked at, but there's lots of different permutations of different options. So I'm not going to be the one to say that there's only those three or anything like that. I think that, again, part of the process is getting as many ideas as possible. Does that answer your question? You have a lady over there that hasn't asked a question.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. Cindy Lohman, and I'm a resident. I work in as well as live in Jefferson County. Just a quick question. Have you done an analysis on how much you will save if you close the fairground one day a week? You're not going to save 1/7 of the money, but how much would you save?
We did. That was one of the options that brought us from the 28% up to the 57%. So that is something that was factored into possible savings. I don't know exactly what that particular number was, but I know that that was one of the things that got us up to the 57%.
And I think there's a lady back here that hasn't had a question yet.
I just had a question about, you had mentioned something about Western Airs taking over. Is it possible to form some other non-associated nonprofit to run some of the activities? And yes, that sounds huge amount of fundamental, but would all that feed back into a general fund? Like, could you have a separate entity of a nonprofit that was the fairgrounds?
So typically what we do, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, so if a nonprofit wants to step up and then form what would be considered a public-private partnership, there would be a contract that would be put in place, and then if we do this on the human services side of the house, we have various organizations, whether it's Family Tree or Jefferson Center for Mental Health. Those organizations have contracts with the county where they step up and they provide their nonprofit piece, and there is some funding that goes to that, but most of the work is being done by the nonprofit. So if a nonprofit was to be formed with the idea, well, Western Airs is a nonprofit, right? So if they were to step up and say, we'd really like to take a shot at doing this, and we'd like a contract with the county in order to run it, that's certainly within the realm of the possible.
But then anything that they make as revenue, it's like an enterprise system, it doesn't go back in.
It doesn't go to us, no, because that's, what's that?
Right, as long as it doesn't come to us.
As long as
it's
it
not
doesn't come to
Tabor's.
us and it doesn't come to general fund. If you're charging your own, if you're running the fairgrounds and you're charging fees and you're figuring out how to get the balance of what isn't being paid for from sponsors or everything else, that doesn't count. That is essentially acting, I think that would fall like almost within a special fund category, not an enterprise, but,
Right, it would.
you know, because, and not even, it's not a special fund, because that's more like open space, but it's a nonprofit organization, you're running the fairgrounds, that doesn't fall into the equation. I think that's the way it would work, yeah. That it goes along the line of, like, if anybody had $5 or $10 million, if any nonprofit would like to step up, that would absolutely work.
Ten FTEs.
10 FTEs.
What's the payroll? It's gonna vary depending on their role.
No, the total payroll.
So, salaries, yeah, let me pull that up, sorry.
Cause I saw a number that was more than that.
It's definitely not a high number, I know.
No, you might have seen the events and venues number, but even that, I mean, that's like 20, it's not
Like
much more.
17.
Yeah, I mean, because when we made the movie, events and venues, so the Betcher Mansion was part of the equation. And again, in an effort to try to help make an entire portfolio that, you know, some portions of your portfolio don't make money and others do, but there's a risk issue. And so this is low risk, this is high risk, but I get a good rate return that helps me pay for the entire thing. So that's kind of what we're looking at. But I know the payroll for the fairgrounds is,
It's about $780K, but that does take into account salaries, benefits, and then there's 2 temps rolled into that as well. We only have 2, at least in 2019. Well,
hire more for fair festivals?
we did interns.
Okay, thank you. Just for the record, I wasn't laughing when you said to Jason. I just emailed my school board member. You may be getting a call.
All right, so I think we have two ladies that wanted to ask, or maybe 3 that wanted to ask a second question. Let's do that, and then I think at that point we'll close this meeting. So if you want to go ahead, ma'am.
I just wanted to make a comment that added on to what David was saying with added value. This place is a place where there's a lot of agricultural that's done, but through 4-H and other activities that get done out here, there's STEM things that are being done. My son and my daughter grew up through Western Airs and 4-H, and my son is graduating from Colorado School of Mines with a software engineering degree, and he's done it in 3 years and is continuing on to get his master's in an additional year. And and he's starting 2 or 3 companies here locally in Jeffco as we speak, and he's 20 years old. And where he got all of that tenacity was here on the fairgrounds. This is the kind of kids that you're bringing up using these fairgrounds. And you're not gonna be able to get it back once it's gone, because once it's gone, it's gone. Just like all of the other open space areas that were once fields or places for the kids to go play capture the flag or whatever it was that they used to do. They're few and far between now. So, you know, it's not all ag, and our county relies on both. I mean, we're not really an agricultural county, but we sure have an awful lot of kids that go up to CSU and come out with agricultural careers because of this location.
Yes, ma'am.
I don't remember exactly who brought it up earlier about events and the prices being raised and how much it is. Is there a way that, I know I think 2013, 2014, I was out here once a week competing in barrels, whatever competitions was going on out here, and now it's only offered, I think Copper Cowboys is like the last group that has those continual competitions. I know when I approached several of those people, they said specifically, the fairgrounds has raised their prices so much, they have got so many fees, we can't do these. Is there a way that we can cut some of those fees so those people can come back and bring in those event revenues back? Because I know that they want to come back and they're always asking me questions on how to come back, but they don't want, it's not they don't want to pay the fees, it's just between the fees of the thing, my fee to pay to compete was not covering, they were losing money from this place. How can we fix that for those type of jackpots to come back and continually doing things like that again?
So one thing I do want to address, we haven't had a rate increase since 2014. So that's just something to keep in mind. The other piece of that is our team does bend over backwards to try and figure out ways to bring agricultural business here. One example of that is stock show. So we do offer a discount for anyone that's staying in town for stock show to come camp or stall here because it does fit with our mission. Same thing with events. We do try and figure out ways that we can do discounts to encourage that business. You know, there are certain things we can discount and other things we can't. There's hard costs to us that we can't discount.
Right.
We do try and work with them to discount facility fees.
So, and then I guess part two of that question is what qualifies as a youth event versus a normal event? Because I know at Copper Cowboys, most of the people who compete are youth, but there are still a few adults that compete. I don't know if they're qualified under the youth or not, but that's just who I'm using as an example. What qualifies as a youth event for somebody who would like to bring more events in?
So, youth is qualified as any Jefferson County youth organization. So, public schools, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, their address does have to be in Jefferson County to qualify for that youth rate. And then a majority of their participants have to be youth as well. So, the key, for example, with Copper Cowboys is it's not a youth organization, so that's why they wouldn't qualify for the youth rate.
Okay.
With that example, though, as we speak about partnerships, we do partner with Copper Cowboys, Jeffco Horse Council, Lakewood Riding Club, and Buffalo Bill Saddle Club, where we do an exchange for a monitored open ride.
Right.
In exchange, they do get free meeting space for the year, in exchange for their volunteers' time. So things like that, where we do try and partner, stuff, they might add on events, which they would be charged for if it falls outside of that agreement that's been in place for a very long time. And Kirsten's our ag equine event coordinator. That particular gymkhana is free that you were speaking to, because it falls under that original agreement.
No, I knew there used to be more. I just know that they're like kind of the only ones that are, I don't know of any other one. Like I said, in 2013, I was here almost every week competing, and now I have to drive to Boulder County, Arapahoe County, Douglas County, and I've asked them to come back to Jefferson County, and they said, we can't afford it anymore because of their rate raise in 2014. So I don't know if that's something we can, I don't know if that's something we can fix so we could bring those people back, because I know True West was here at least once a month. Once or twice a month, and for a whole summer, and I don't know what the going rate for that is, but I know if we could get them back in here once a month, that would help with the
big
revenue.
wheels. They bring the big wheels.
And
the PRCA girls and stuff like that. So that might help there. It's just an idea.
All right, one last question, and did you have a question?
Yeah, the 4.6% that you were referring to that we're at right now, is that all of events and whatever venues, or is that just the fairgrounds?
No, what I was talking about in terms of 4.67% spending rate versus the Tabor rate, that is countywide, that is for the general fund.
The general fund,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, so, yeah.
And
If we were to do one for the fairgrounds, it would be way up here with
Yeah.
the revenues down here, so that wouldn't be a good number, I wouldn't.
I was like, oh, that seems actually really.
Yeah.
And then the funding, I know that there's like a lot of, I think they said like $3 billion at this point, dollars that are sitting from the marijuana industry, and I know that, I think it was 2018, 12.4 million went into the general fund, outside of what they were using for schools and all that stuff. Does any of that ever come to like events and venues and things that are meant to kind of provide places for this is a youth organization, the whole purpose of that taxation was to provide for youth. So.
Yeah, I don't, no, it doesn't go there, and to be honest with you, the marijuana revenue, I think, going back to the gentleman's point about at the state legislature and making I think that money there needs to be released a little bit more, and maybe, see, the problem is even if they release that money, it counts against Tabor. So that money will go to other counties that have addressed that. If they decided to open the floodgates, we're still subject to our county limits. So if they, let's just say they decided to give every 60 of the 64 counties, they were gonna give them all $10 million. That wouldn't help us, because I'd have to turn around and give that back. Right, because we would be at our limit, and that's the only limiting part of Tabor. Again, that's the harder part. The going to the voters for an increase, that kind of stuff, but that's where the Tabor limit piece for us. That's why there's a mill levy reduction that we do every year. We do that. That's a front end rebate, if you will. A lot of other communities will actually collect that money up and then refund it at the end of the year, or put a ballot out there that says, can we keep this excess Tabor and apply it towards fixing this intersection, or funding the fairgrounds, or doing very specific things. And I think, but we don't collect that money up on the front end. We actually do mill levy reduction on the front end. So, and it's been somewhere around the mill levy reduction's been somewhere around 4 mills.
Quick question, what is the exact website place you want us to send comments to, please?
Do you have that email address, or can you pull that up on the?
For commissioners? Link?
Not for commissioners, for the website address to go to fill out the form. If you go to the Jeffco site, I think there's a, just go to jeffco.us. So when you get to our website, is it one of the icons?
Go to Jeffco.us, top, and type in /3839. That's just the quickest way at this point, because we're just putting that back up. Scroll
What
down.
button would you click if you're on the top page?
I don't have it up there right at
Okay.
this moment, but if you go, and then it's, you gotta scroll, it's in the, your screen is really big, so it's over on the side. Okay. Right there.
Questions or ideas? So if you go to our financial page, our budget page on the website, or if you do, like you said, go to jeffco.us and then in after the slash put 3839, that'll bring you to the chase. It also has some pretty good videos on there that help explain Tabor and how it works and the different levers. It's actually pretty important. Scroll down. No, I'm sorry. So property taxes 101 gives you a good idea. It shows you where all every dollar that you pay in property tax, where exactly it goes. Go up. And then this one kind of talks about the budget, and it also talks about some of the effects of Tabor. So it's out there. That's for in terms of education, and it's the opportunity to provide some input. That site was set up, or that particular part was set up when the board decided to go with a ballot initiative, and we wanted to do a better job of educating the folks on the budget process and what it means to budget here in Colorado.
So that's where you want us to go for the comments to follow up for this meeting to
Or
help
they can
the
go,
commissioners?
go directly to, or you can go directly to the commissioners.
You can go directly to commissioners, and if you go to their portion of the web, there's an email address under their
But I'm
name.
just saying, for the public forum comments,
Uh-huh.
this is where you want us to go.
I think
Because you're saying,
Yeah, either's fine. If you do put public comments and you want a response back, we just ask that you put your name, or you at least put your contact information. If we get enough, so typically we don't create a FAQ unless we get several hits on a particular type of question, and then we'll try to produce a FAQ. But if you want a response back, and then we can give you a response, and we just ask that you put your contact information.
I'm just asking what action items we can do to help support the advisory committee and the continuation of the fairgrounds. So best way to communicate with everybody.
I would say both.
Both.
I'll be honest with you, because I mean, I don't think the county commissioners, our staff looks at this and looks to answer the questions and get that feedback. We do bring stuff to the commissioners too, in terms of issues, but to be honest with you, I think an email directly to an elected official. And to be honest with you, it's not just the Board of County Commissioners, because the other elected officials are talking about their stuff too. If you think it's more important, or you think than emailing the sheriff's not necessarily a bad thing. Letting him know that, you think the fairgrounds is as important as the business that he's doing, and you want to keep people out of jail, because, those are all things that all the elected officials, that entire body that was elected, I think that's the way the process works.
Well, thank you for your time this evening. Thank you to the board.
So, and thank you all for coming out. We all appreciate it. I know the Fairgrounds Advisory Committee does. I think Mr. Davis has been a great asset to come out and spend the time with us and answer the questions and take the time. And I want to thank you for coming out and doing that, as well as Julie and the staff. It's been a long night, and with that, I would
make a motion we adjourn.
And we are adjourned. All in favor? Aye, we are adjourned.